Welcome to the Cali Sober Mom Podcast. Monica and Brittany are changing the conversation about motherhood, cannabis, and mental health, considering themselves unhinged Martha Stewart adjacent. Monica is a previous corporate America warrior turned mom and voice in the cannabis and consumer advocacy world. Brittany is an artist, business owner, mother, and mental health advocate. Now, here are your hosts, the Cali Sober Moms.
Welcome back to Cali Sober Mom. This is Monica Lano, and I am not only joined by my amazing co-host, Brittany Brown. We decided to go full Iowa today. So if you don't know, Brittany and I both grew up in Des Moines. We were random walker partners. That's a whole nother story. And she is still in Des Moines. I am based in New Orleans, but home base will always be Des Moines. And we have Lacie on today, who owns quite a few SunMed CBD stores in the Des Moines area. And we are going to talk all things cannabis, hemp, Iowa legislation, and DUIs from our favorite governor.
Oh, what a treat for everyone.
Right.
Goodness.
But Lacie, welcome to Cali Sober Mom and our unhinged feralness.
Hey, I fit right in, so it's fine.
Are you from Des Moines?
Yeah, so I grew up on the east side. Hey. But I got adopted when I was 12 and moved to Johnston. So high culture shock from Des Moines schools to Johnston in the middle of 8th grade. So
I want to interrupt you because I had a very interesting similar story. I lived in Altoona until I was in 8th grade, and then I went to Brody. So it was quite different. Southeast Polk to Lincoln was quite the shift a bit there. Interesting.
And for those of you that are not familiar with Iowa, just imagine how small Iowa is anyway. So you move from one side of town to the other, whether it's good, bad, upper class, lower class, it's shockingly different, which I'm sure you have in your own areas too.
yeah, to age myself, like Jinko jeans, we remember those
Hey.
giant legs, right? Those were like pretty cool in Des Moines schools at the time. And then I moved to Johnston and it was like limited to. And I'm like, what is a limited to? I feel like it's a store weirdo. Like, oh, well, this is not at all the same. Okay.
Well, Lacie, I have my first question for you, which is wild because I never asked the first question, but I'm actually super interested what it has been like over the tenure of the time that you first opened your first CBD store to now. How long ago was that? And then how has it been? Like differences in the political climate, differences in how you have dealt with public perception of cannabis and CBD and hemp and all of these things. What has shifted? What has gotten better? What has gotten worse? Any of those things.
So I opened the first CBD store in January of 2019. So I was the first person to open a CBD store in Des Moines, which prompted Iowa to have to respond to the federal farm bill. So I had rolled the dice that Trump would pass the farm bill in December of 2018, and he did. So I was already ready. I had a space lease. I had inventory. I was ready to go because my intention was to be the first person to do this. So in the beginning, politically, it was actually heavily supported, bipartisan supported, both sides. I think 89-1, the hemp bills passed. Ironically, and we can get into this later if time allows, but Brad Zahn, who is a very staunch Republican here, very outspoken, most people know who he is. He was one of my biggest supporters, and he was at my ribbon cutting for the chamber and that whole thing. The first year I was open, to be extra careful, I only sold broad spectrum hemp products, which if someone doesn't know, that means that all cannabinoids or parts of the plant are present minus THC, which we take out completely. Therefore, there's no THC in these products. I knew it would be, real controversial here. So I was vanilla, like, okay, let's ease Iowa into this. So obviously by the end of the year, in December of 2019, I was arrested. A SWAT team came in. I had 4 felony charges. They raided my store. They froze my account. So pretty unpopular all of a sudden. And it truly was all of a sudden.
Did you have any clue that was coming? Because you telling this story, that is not what I expected to hear next. Like, you did the right things. You followed the rules. Like, you watched the legislation. You eased into it. It just came out of nowhere that a SWAT team comes in and arrests you, because that has to be traumatizing.
It's kind of a double-edged sword of a question. So yes, I knew about 2 weeks before, but so prior to opening any store, at the time of my arrest, I had 3 locations. So it happened very fast for me. I opened one, then the second and third. So by, 10 months later, I had 3 stores. So before I opened a store in any city, I met with the mayor of that city, the police chief of that city, sat down, got permission, just to do my due diligence. The law said I could. I was aware of that, but I just wanted to make sure. I gave them labs, the whole shebang. So I got a phone call randomly on my cell phone one day, and it was a police officer. He identified himself and he said, "Hey, just so you know, you're going to have to close down your stores." And I said, "False. Why?" And he said, "Well, we've been undercover buying from your shops, and your products tested positive as marijuana." And I said, "You're lying. That's not possible. It's not chemically possible for that to be true." So he said, "I'll email the labs to you." So this was already strange to me. I get a phone call from someone saying they're a police officer, telling me my products are marijuana and I need to shut my store down. And I'm like, this seems weird. Why would this happen? So I pushed him. He said, "I'll email you the labs that prove that they're marijuana." We got a list from the Med Farm, which is our medical marijuana dispensary here, of people that we need to prosecute for illegally selling cannabis. So I'm like, why would a business be able to make the police department move? That doesn't make, none of it made sense, okay? That doesn't mean it didn't happen, because this is how it happened.
Oh, I believe you.
I had attorneys. I had corporate attorneys from SunMed, and then I had to have local counsel, obviously, that knew Iowa's laws and were barred here. So all of the attorneys that I was dealing with, which were about 5, all said, "Do not shut your shop. You are not committing a crime. You're obeying the law. Stand your ground." Being a mom, having kids, the police officer on that phone call had said it was Black Friday weekend. So he had said to me, "I know this is going to be a busy weekend for you. So just by Monday, have your shop closed." So that was another red flag.
Like, we're going to let you sell as much as you possibly can to appease you, let you be financially stringent through the next couple months, because we know you have kids, but we're going to screw you over nonetheless.
Right. So name another time that you've had a police officer call a criminal cell phone to say, "You can continue to sell your illegal drugs through the weekend, just be closed by Monday," right? So by Monday, I did close. And I just I remember, like, what am I going to put on social media? Yeah, I can't, this is ridiculous. I don't even know how to explain it. So I just said, like, employee appreciation, like, whatever. I got to put something on it. So during this week's time, my lawyers were still saying, "Lacie, you don't need to shut your shops down. This is a scare tactic. Like, don't fall for it." So I reopened the shops, and a day later, SWAT team comes in. I'm arrested. My products are seized. My accounts are frozen, the whole shebang. So yes, I knew ahead of time, but also the way that it happened made no sense to me, like it wouldn't to anybody.
Did you ever find out what happened with, like, the cop that called you, or was there any credence to any of the stuff that they were saying was real? Like, what happened with that?
Yeah, so the cop that called me was the one that also arrested me. And I remember when he arrested me, the whole time he was saying, "Lacie, I'm so sorry. I don't believe in this. I think this is a waste of money. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I have no choice. I have to arrest you." So to dig into, your products tested positive as marijuana. So uniquely, SunMed, the brand I carry, has a USDA organic stamp. So we have, like, another layer of proof that what I'm selling is hemp, right? So my lawyers immediately went to move for dismissal. Like, this is ridiculous. Why is she being charged with 4 marijuana felonies? I was facing 20 years in prison, okay, for something with no THC. So,
And can I ask you too, I think one thing, especially for, the listener on the other end of this podcast, is a lot of us have kids. And you're talking felonies, going away for 20 years, SWAT team, your livelihood.
And Lacey's also a single mom. I don't know if you know that, but like the reality of trying to manage your internal monologue of, oh my God, I have to leave my kids for 20 years. Also, Lacie, you just mentioned you were adopted, which inference says that was a foster care adoption or something that was similar to that, or just a type of adoption that means that you got pulled out of your entire world into another world, and imagining that for your children, that had to have been horrifically traumatizing.
very traumatizing for sure. So to hit on that a little bit, I think choosing me, because the state was wanting to choose somebody, right? They wanted to criminalize this industry. And I was the perfect choice because I was a mother and I was a female, right? I'm going to be terrified and I'm going to take the first plea they offer me, right? Because that's what happened. They offered me a plea maybe a week after my arrest because their intent wasn't truly to put me in prison. I don't think it was to scare me into taking a plea to criminalize the industry. So I knew that. So I rejected all 7 plea deals I was offered throughout a 2.5-year course of time where my businesses were shut down and my bank accounts were frozen for over 2 years. So in that time, I had to work 6 jobs because I had 3 children and a mortgage, and I had my retail spaces I had to pay rent on because I'm in leases, right? So that was horrible, but I'm glad now that they did choose me because I feel like the other men, because there were really no CBD stores around yet until right before I got arrested. So I was really kind of the only one up until a few months before my arrest.
To my knowledge, there's only one other main one that was in town. And I think because that human, who I actually like, but doesn't have kids, doesn't have a spouse that is unmarried,
Right.
and generally operates not just here, but out of state as well, choosing him
Right.
would not have had the same impact politically that yours did.
They thought I was easier. I was an easier target. I was also the first and the biggest at the time. So I made sense, right? But there was no legal ground, obviously, in my opinion.
You are a resilient warrior. I'm going to tell you that if no one's told you. I think as women, we don't think of it that way. We know what the hell needs to be done. We do it. We take care of business and we move on to the next thing that needs to be done. And when people hear our story, they're blown away and they want to talk about resiliency. And I know you're already 10 steps ahead because you don't end there. You keep going. So if you haven't been told in a while, you haven't really soaked it in. Just, you are an amazing mom, an amazing woman, and you are a warrior.
And that feels good. So I'm going to soak it in for a second because it is difficult. And it's just, sometimes I think about the strength of females, and I'm not like super feminist lady. Like, that's not my MO. It's really not. But if you truly think about the things that your mothers went through, or your grandmothers, or your best friend, or whoever, women go through these really traumatic things, and we're just so internally strong, emotionally strong, I feel like. That's why at the end of the day, I'm happy they chose me because, I wasn't going to bow down. And, it's tough because as a mother, our kids are the most important things in our lives. So when I have DHS saying, oh, you have 4 felony drug charges, and I'm like, so I developed like a PTSD, which I've never had. I've been lucky to really not have anxiety or a lot of internal issues, which is surprising, or maybe I'm just really good at stuffing them down enough. But I definitely did. I had a panic attack. I had no idea what it was. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was going to die. Like, I truly couldn't sleep for days, and it was terrible. If anyone knocked on my door, and still to this day, if someone knocks on my front door, I start panicking for no reason at all. Or if I see a police officer, and it's just so unfair because I never broke any rules. But to kind of go, I'm going to touch a little bit on, this whole your product's tested positive as marijuana, right? So how is that possible? How did that happen? So I had to find out, and it's such a long process. Anything in the judicial system is such a long process. So when I got these labs from the police officer that called my cell phone, he emailed them to me. Of course, I sent them to my lawyers. My Iowa lawyer, he is a cannabis expert, so he can easily see through this. So Iowa's technology at that time was so far behind that when you put my hemp products into a drug testing machine, there is no pre-nomer. There's no, when you create a machine, right, you have to put in, this is what heroin looks like. This is what cocaine looks like. This is what marijuana looks like. So when they got my stuff, they didn't really have something to identify it as because hemp wasn't loaded as even a possibility it could choose.
It wasn't calibrated correctly. Is that kind of like they calibrate it for each one and it just had never been calibrated for hemp?
Nothing. Yeah, there was nothing in there for hemp at all. So when it spit out a result, the result said marijuana preparation. So it didn't say, tetrahydrocannabidiol or marijuana, like when they test actual marijuana, it says that. So this was something different. So my lawyers immediately, we went to court right away and questioned this. What does this mean? The state was an hour late for court. Then they sent in someone who's never been, had no idea about my case at all, wasn't involved at all. So I'm intern. So it was ridiculous.
Because they knew they were wrong, but nonetheless.
Right. They were fighting things in the law that weren't there. But anyway, so it spit out this marijuana preparation. There was no legal definition. No one could define it because they'd never seen it. They didn't know what it meant. So my lawyers would say, okay, how much THC was in there? We want to know the THC content. And they said, well, there was no THC. And they said, okay, so dismiss this charge. It can't be marijuana. So Iowa's drug expert said, this is a special strain of marijuana. It is a THC-free marijuana, but it is still marijuana. So my lawyers and I, our minds are blown because the things that are being said by professionals in court were so incorrect and not science-based, and there was nothing to back what they said. But because the judges did not understand this industry, I had to recuse themselves from the cases because they were like, we have one side saying these bath bombs and gummy bears are drugs, and the other side saying this is ridiculous. No, they're not.
That is wild that the judges recuse. I have a really close friend who has applied to be a judge multiple times. And when I tell you they don't do that.
You know what I've learned from following politics in this weird year that I've found myself in learning and researching all this? You can actually say whatever you want. Laws, they don't matter. It's just a matter of how much influence you can get behind whatever you choose to say and how quickly you can get it done. Because those that try to do it the right way, get the lawyers, fight for 2 years, they think they're going to beat you down and win. And so they just do this. And because of their foundation or their name or their role, there's this intrinsic trust that the public has in them, right? The government would never arrest anybody incorrectly. They would never charge someone they knew was wrong. No, they just say and do whatever they want and see how far they can take it. It's fascinating.
If that had not been for SunMed, that's what would have happened, because that for sure was the intent. So my corporate brand stepped up and paid all of my legal fees. They said, this is ridiculous. We can't believe this is happening to you. We've got your back. So thank God.
Kudos, SunMed. We will put Lacie's link and a shout out to SunMed in the notes.
Lacie posted this morning that SunMed's corporate is directly in line of the hurricane that's coming. So just good vibes to them. Obviously, when this goes out, it will have already happened and we'll know more. But at the same time, it's so hard to see incredible companies that have, really hard environmental things that happen because they clearly care about their people. So
Thank you. That's very sweet. And I'm sure they'll appreciate it. And, so this criminal fight I went through, they paid all my legal fees, which were in the six figures, 2 years of 4 lawyers, you can imagine, right? And so this second bout here with the state recently, we had a law change here in July, which was catastrophic, ignorant, irresponsible. I could go on and on. I was there every single day at the Capitol. A lot of people don't know that, like the advocacy stuff. I post here and there, but I don't like the whole look at me stuff when it comes to this because it's truly heartbreaking for me.
Lacie, do you post about it on LinkedIn? Because that's where Monica posts about it all the time.
Here's the thing.
I give her so much shit for LinkedIn.
I am learning the industry via LinkedIn, and I learned very quickly because Louisiana was the first one to propose very similar laws to Iowa. And I was shouting from the rooftop, like, guys, like, this is happening down here. This is relationships, and this is total backdoor dealings to keep entrenched, powerful people in place. And everyone I talked to on the national level had told me, that's just Louisiana. That's just Louisiana. And then you see it happening state by state by state. And the reason this podcast is here, the reason I'm on LinkedIn, the reason I'm on Instagram is because if we're not aware of this until someone gets SWAT team or until someone gets attacked, similar to what they're doing where they just arrest you and think they can bulldoze, they're gonna keep doing that to this industry and anything that's healthy for Americans so they can keep making us sick for profit. And by being pro-feminism or whatever they want to call us, by calling it out early enough, it's the hope that when these ridiculous legislations come up, no matter what arena they're in, we're all banded together. We can come on here and say, hey, ridiculous legislation, women fucking mount up, let's go fight, because you don't want to fight against women. And if we can get women and moms around these things, we can do something. So I know you don't want to be me. Say it sometimes, but we've got to find leaders to be behind this and let them push that information out.
It's important, Lacie, for you to remember that nobody can support you unless they know they need to.
Facebook has my algorithms, so
Facebook's the worst. Like, not Facebook.
I can't even post the word gummy or else they're like, you're selling drugs, 30-day ban. And I'm like, nothing was even illegal. But anyway, it's a total, Meta is a total fuckery. Sorry, I can't cuss on here.
No, you can cuss. Fuck damn shit. You can cuss. Sorry.
We put explicit in there. But before I totally get us down that rabbit hole, thank you, everyone, for my political rant. I have to do for 30 seconds every time.
Monica always has one that's always a little unhinged. And I look at her, I'm like, Monica, you have 30 seconds to be crazy. You have 30 seconds politically crazy.
But to not drown everyone in that, can you let us know? It sounds like your stores are still in. So we want to say kudos to beating that. Kudos for fighting your ass off. And how can we make sure if someone is in a state like Louisiana, if they're not in a California, if they're not in a Colorado, if they're not somewhere where this is so pro legislation and so normal, how can we make those that care aware? And how can we help gently spread that to those that don't know they need to care yet?
So I think that industries like mine, where there's a lot of confusion, it is a science-based industry, right? So if you have no education on the science, you're not going to get it. And so bad players take advantage of that with the public. And I've seen it here the whole time because they'll just say, this is bad. And we've heard cannabis is bad since Reagan. Well, before that, but more so since then, right? And so they do these media tactics. So one that was done here, we kept seeing while this legislation was moving here, 1,090% increase in minors hospitalized with THC intoxication. So I said, okay, you're using a percentage for a reason. Okay, so let me see the detailed numbers. So I'm in a group called the Iowa Hemp Alliance. Check us out. We have a website. There's a band of us together. We actually sued the state of Iowa in federal court recently about these laws. Okay, so we got detailed numbers from Iowa's CDC because that's who keeps track of this. It went from 6 people to 62 people in our whole state, right? In a year's time with THC intoxication of minors. So then they give you
Which is also vague.
Vague as hell.
Yes, right. So you don't know if the THC comes from recreational from another state, which it probably does, medical marijuana, or hemp. Well, we get all of them, right? Because we're the bad consumable hemp stores, the O'Douls of cannabis, right? So then they have a graph that says it even tells you the ages of these hospitalizations, right? So there's age 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 18, right? And it tells you how many of these 62 people were there. So overwhelmingly, you'll never guess what age group was by far the most hospitalized.
Was it the teenagers?
It wasn't. And everyone thinks that. It was actually 0 to 5.
Interesting.
So when they're trying to blame the retailers for selling teenagers THC and they're dying in the ERs here, it's actually parents that accidentally leave gummies on the table and their 2-year-old eats it and they panic and they take them to the hospital.
And it could have been a marijuana gummy. It could have been a recreational gummy because we all know Kansas City is not a far drive away.
Could have been anything.
But this is all purposeful, and that's the point, because you guys know what this is. As soon as I saw the graph, I knew what this was, and so we have to be responsible to say, people will say, well, Lacie, we don't want your stores to shut down. Okay, you have to take this idea. Thank you for supporting me, but think about everybody else. Think about your grandma that has sleep gummies, or your cousin who has crippling anxiety that doesn't want to be on prescription medications. I mean, obviously, we know that this is holistic medicine versus Western medicine. And I hope most people are waking up to the fact that a lot of things can be solved with plant medicines and not these chemicals made in a lab that we don't even know what the fuck they're going to do to us in 5 years.
And there's value in both. There's value in knowing that. So as somebody that has chronic migraines and has since she was 8, I have both. I do both because ultimately sometimes cannabis can't touch the highest level of my migraines. But also then I don't have to take these crazy ass meds that knock me on my ass for like the start of a migraine. I have other options to treat that, and I can use cannabis for that. And I think that's really valid.
And simplistically enough, you should have the choice, right? This is about choice. If you don't want to participate in cannabis, don't. You say proceed, but to tell me that what I'm selling is drugs and question the safety, because I'll occasionally get a customer in the store that's like, well, I don't know that this is safe, and this is different, and I need to, and I'm like, you can do research, but my inside brain is blowing up because I'm like, no, your doctor is the drug dealer and I am actually not. So, but you don't say that. And I understand where people hesitate. I get it. But I think, and I said this to a lot of the senators and people in the Capitol. I said, if ignorance of the law is no excuse for me as a citizen, why the fuck is an excuse for you when you're making laws? You couldn't tell me a single thing about this industry. And no one argued with me because how could they?
How could they?
How could they?
Girl, Lacie, I could talk to you for hours. You have been absolutely amazing. As we mentioned, you are a warrior. You are resilient.
We're very lucky to have you in Iowa.
Thank you.
Very lucky.
Thank you. I'll come back anytime and just give you my perspective.
Yes. Well, next time I'm back in Des Moines, I'm going to come visit you in person, and we will put all your links. Everyone, go support Lacie, go support SunMed, go support Iowa, and reach out to Lacie if you have any questions on how to get involved, you want to do more with the legislative, or you just want to learn.
Absolutely.
That's what she's here for. So we appreciate having you, and we will talk to you soon.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Cali Sober Mom podcast. The best way for us to get the word out is you. So share this episode with someone you know who will enjoy it. And be sure to follow Cali Sober Mom on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're consuming the show right now.